vinyl community. Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I'm going to be revisiting the Kiss album that sat all the way at the bottom of my Kiss studio catalog ranking, and that is Hot in the Shade and whether it is an album that can be fixed. Now, this idea actually came from a comment that I received from a viewer of the channel, and he suggested that I tackle on the task of fixing this album, cutting out some of the dead weight, trimming it down to be more of a concise record. Would it overall be a better record, or would it still be considered at the bottom of the barrel? That is what we are getting into today. So enough of the chit chat, let's jump into what this video is all about. Now, before I go about fixing this record, I want to revisit the reasons why I felt that this record was ranked at the bottom of my Kiss studio catalog ranking, which if you want to check that video out, you can go ahead and do so. I did state that this album was a bold attempt at Kiss returning to their hard rock sound and roots, which I felt was rightly deserved after the band had basically more or less spent the time that they were out of makeup chasing trends, whether it was hair metal with albums such as Animalize and Asylum, or the sort of Bon Jovi style pop metal type of stuff with Crazy Nights. So a back to basics album sounds great on paper, but unfortunately it didn't quite convey with this album. This was 1989 and the CD age had basically taken over, where bands would fill a CD up to the brim of material, thus making albums a bit bloated and full of filler, and that's exactly what the case was with this album. And it's such a shock because Kiss albums in general up at this point were rather concise, with 10 tracks running on average a little over 30 minutes in length. And here we have 15 tracks clocking in at about an hour. It's a totally aggro move from what Kiss fans had been used to. And what makes this album a bit problematic is the way that it was recorded and assembled, or should I say barely recorded. The band more or less took the demos that they were working on at the time and just polished them a bit instead of re-recording them in the studio. Supposedly this was to give the album more of a raw feel, but it also does eliminate budget costs for studio time. But given the fact that some of the demos brought in for the record used drum machines and they were inclined to still feature them, is a bit absurd, especially when you had a drummer at the caliber of Eric Carr who was totally capable of laying down some solid drum tracks. And aside from that facet, various outside musicians were summoned to play on the demos, and even some of the band members played different instruments rather than their own on the recordings. So it's safe to say that this album is a Kiss album in name only. I did also state in my ranking video that within this album there is a decent 10-track album that can be more in line with traditional Kiss records, and that is what the intent of this video is. I am going to create a 10-track version of Hot in the Shade. And the way that I'm approaching this is similar to how I approached creating a 1978 Kiss studio album based on the 1978 solo albums, which I did a whole video on if you want to check that out. And that is focusing on the politics of Kiss records. On the original Hot in the Shade album, you have 15 tracks. Take away the aspect of co-writers and outside writers, you have 7 songs for Gene, 7 songs for Paul, and then 1 left for Eric Carr. Now, if we were to shorten this album by 10, it would be a bit uneven, but now just to provide a bit of context and history, during the non-makeup period of the 80s, Kiss was very much Paul's baby, as Gene had his eyes on various other endeavors such as acting and producing, so he wasn't as active as much as Paul was. But after the period of Crazy Nights, Gene had kind of started to be more involved, but if you look at all of the various singles that came out during the non-makeup period of the 80s, they were all generally Paul songs, and Gene material didn't become prominent until 1992's Revenge. So I'm taking a bold step in choosing 5 Paul songs, 4 Gene songs, and then 1 Eric song. So that right there is a bit of a spoiler for you. So the big question will be, would the cutting of the dead weight make this album better, or will it still be regarded as one of the more weaker efforts? Let's get down to work and find out. This album is going to open the same way as it starts, with track number 1, Rise to It. This song starts off with a bluesy acoustic riff, and then the band kicks right in and the song is rockin'. There is also a memorable music video for the song where Gene and Paul are in makeup and costume for the first time since 1983, even though the fictitious makeup footage is from Backstage 1975. You can find all the inaccuracies based on the outfits they were wearing, but I digress. You gotta see it to believe it. This song was also released as the final single from Hot in the Shade in May 1990, 1990, and it was performed during the corresponding tour, so the band must have really dug the tune enough to go to those extremes of pushing and playing it. I've honestly really liked this song upon digging into this album early on as a Kiss fan, and I felt that it did start the album off decently, hence why I have retained it for my 10-track album. Track 2 is also coincidentally the follow-up track from the original album, and that is Betrayed. This song was written by Gene Simmons and future Kiss guitarist Tommy Thayer. Of course, prior to joining the band in 2002, Tommy was in a band called Black and Blue that Gene had produced, and then Tommy would do some co-writing with Gene, play on some demos, become their tour manager, and then ultimately don the Spaceman makeup. Now, given the co-writing credit, it is likely that Tommy did play guitar on this track, and the band must have had some faith in this track since it was performed at a club gig at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, and that was the only live airing it received, and this song was also the B-side to the Hide Your Heart single. Not gonna lie, this album starts out strong because track 3 is Hide Your Heart. Now, this song has a bit of a history before Kiss recorded it. It was written as far back as 1987 by Paul Stanley along with Holly Knight and Desmond Child. It was offered to a slew of other musicians who recorded versions of it, such as Robin Beck, Molly Hatchet, Bonnie Tyler, and even original Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley, who recorded it for his Trouble Walkin' album. Now, Paul did go as far to perform this song on his 1989 solo tour, and it was deemed essential enough for Kiss to have a crack at it, and it was released as the first single from the album. Unfortunately, it didn't do much for the band since the market was more than likely oversaturated from the use of the song since it had been covered so many times in such a short time span. So the single, along with the West Side Story influenced music video, didn't do much for the band. The song itself is so well suited for Kiss shows since it has that melody in the chorus that is easy to sing along to, and it was performed live by the band during the Hot in the Shade tour, and they even resurrected it during their 40th anniversary tour in 2014. Track 4 is Love's a Slap in the Face. This is a Gene song that was co-written with Vinnie Poncia, producer of Dynasty, Unmasked, as well as Peter Criss's 1978 solo album. Definitely a bit of a filler track, but I see this as Gene's attempt to write something in the vein of Hide Your Heart, a la the sing-along melody in the chorus. Could have maybe worked in a live setting, but like many tracks from Hot in the Shade, it was never performed live. Track 5 is the big hit Forever. This was a collaboration between Paul Stanley and a rather recognizable name, Michael Bolton, who was in a band called Blackjack with Bruce Kulick. It was a simple case where Paul was interested in collaborating with him, and Michael wanted to write a power ballad for Kiss. So sure enough, they did just that, and that was simply it. Now, when Hide Your Heart did nothing for them as the first single, they did have a video prepared for Rise to It, which was due to be the second single, and that decision was changed to have Forever be the single that was released in December of 1989, and the end result was this massive hit that gave the band their biggest charting single since 1976's Beth, and it became a live staple for the first several years of the 90s, and it's safe to say that the success of this single pushed the album to be certified gold. Track 6 is Silver Spoon. Paul had his shot at collaborating with Vinnie Poncia just like Gene had done, and this song has been stated to be one of Paul's favorites from this album, and it very much embodies the spirit of Anything's Possible that came across strong in some of Gene's compositions. The one thing that I despise about this track are the female backing vocals towards the end of the track. It sounds totally out of place on a Kiss track, and sure, it could work elsewhere if it wasn't Kiss. This track was never performed live by Kiss, but it must have meant something enough to be featured on the 2001 Kiss box set, and it was also the B-side to the Rise to It single. Track 7 is The Street Giveth and The Street Taketh Away, another collaboration between Gene and Tommy. The brief acoustic bits used in this song have that same kind of bluesy tinge that could be found in Rise to It. The Hey Mans featured in the verses remind me very much of David Bowie's Suffragette City, and hell, there is even a lyric about being a rock and roll suicide. Coincidence? I don't know. The main reason why that I featured this track is simply because it was the B-side to the Forever single. Track 8 is You Love Me to Hate You. This was a collaboration between Paul Stanley and Desmond Child, and stylistically, this draws some comparisons with the Joan Jett track I Hate Myself for Loving You, but I even got some Bon Jovi vibes out of it. Somewhat reminds me of something that could have been left over from Crazy Nights. You kind of get the sense that Kiss was very much following trends at this point and borrowing bits and pieces from other songs, but don't let the comparison drag the song down because the melody in the chorus is well crafted, and this track does feature some of Paul's strongest vocals on the album. Track 9 is Little Caesar. This is a collaboration between Eric Carr, Gene, and Adam Mitchell, and for the first and only time ever, aside from the re-rendering of Beth on Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, Eric Carr sings lead on a Kiss track. Now, this song germinated musically around the Marvin Gaye song, Ain't That Peculiar. It was more or less a metal rendering of the song, and the original demo can be found on the 2001 Kiss box set, and with the assistance of Gene and Adam, the song was developed from a basic cover version to a full-fledged song. Now, lyrically, this song is about a little guy fighting his way, not listening to others, and doing what he wants to do, which can certainly be adapted to Eric's position in the band, having been in the band for almost 10 years at this point and finally given a chance to shine a light on a Kiss record, but that's a whole other topic in itself. Plus, Gene had given Eric the nickname Little Caesar, so it all hones in entirely. Now, given that this was ultimately Eric's last album with the band before his passing, I felt that it was integral to feature this song. That way, in retrospect, there is something on record with Eric singing lead. Album closes with track 10, and that is Boomerang. This was a collaboration between Gene and Bruce, and that dates back to the Crazy Night sessions, but it wasn't complete until the Hot in the Shade sessions. It was also released as one of the B-sides on the Hide Your Heart CD single. It's been stated that at the time this was one of Gene's favorite tracks from the album because it was the most fun to play, and it was cut live in the studio, and I have to say that loose live nature comes across on this track very strongly. Now, some people condemn this track as Kiss's attempt at doing something in the thrash metal vein, since it is a very fast-paced song, but it comes across as a bit of good fun and a rather strong, bold way to end the album. So after all is said and done, would this modified Kiss album stand out more than its original state? Now, just to give you guys a bit of a refresher, my bottom 5 ranked Kiss albums were Hot in the Shade, Carnival of Souls, Crazy Nights, Music from the Elder, and Animalize. And the reason why I put Hot in the Shade at the bottom is mainly because of all the filler. If the album was to be a bit more concise as I made it, then I think that I would rank Carnival of Souls at the bottom, just down to the aggro grunge type of sound, then Crazy Nights because of the poppy approach, and then Hot in the Shade. So there, that basically shows that I would rank this album higher, and while I do really like some of the songs on this album, I personally feel that they would ultimately reach their full potential again on Revenge, and the songs on Hot in the Shade are nothing compared to what can be found on other non-makeup albums such as Lick It Up or Asylum. And like I said in my ranking video, all of this stuff is solely my opinion. It is neither right or wrong. But now I am poised to ask you guys this question. If you had to craft a 10-track album of Hot in the Shade, what songs would you pick and what songs would you eliminate? Please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.